The Patriots did make a run at Brandon Aiyuk this summer, offering draft picks and money to Brandon Aiyuk. Bert Breer has been reporting on that throughout the course of the summer and even spoke about it even more recently, I think as recently as this past weekend, correct?
Yeah, so I did a bunch of reporting to kind of wrap up the story. So I talked about Sunday night on the shows over at NBC, and then on Monday morning I had kind of an in-depth thing that had every team's offer. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, New England, what the deals would have looked like. Pittsburgh would have been a 2 and a 3. The Niners called a dozen teams trying to flip the 3 for a veteran receiver somewhere else because the Niners wanted a veteran out of it. With the Browns, it would have been a 2, a 5, and Amari Cooper. With the Patriots, it would have been a 2 this year, 2 and 25, a 4 and 26, and Kendrick Bourne. And then, of course, there was the money part of it,
which you said was a 3-year deal at $90 million or a 4-year deal at $32.4 million. They gave him options. They gave him a couple of different choices there. And that shorter deal is sometimes preferred by players so they can hit free agency again sooner.
Because at the back end of these deals, those are usually just de facto team options.
Right. So it's really about that guaranteed money, right? Isn't that really what it's typically about, Bert?
Sure is. That's what I hear.
Now, 4 years,
That's what I hear.
4 years, $120 million with $76 million guaranteed is what he ended up with, right?
Yep.
Okay, $76 million guaranteed and 4 years, $120 on an AAV. It's less money than that biggest Patriots deal that you highlight.
One thing I would say too.
Okay.
People who use the term AAV, it's a tell that they don't talk to anybody in the NFL because nobody uses that term. It's APY in the NFL. It's a little thing. It's just a little tell where I can tell that people don't know what they're talking about when they say AAV. It's a baseball. That's a baseball term. Football is APY.
You know that we use AAV in every sport when we talk about contracts.
I know. I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying.
Sounded like a little douchey criticism.
I'm kind of a dick comment.
I'm saying no, but you're not a reporter. You're not a reporter, and you're not presenting information here.
I wear that badge with pride.
I know. Nor am I, but I hear numbers.
Thank God.
I know.
That I don't have to come in here and grovel to Elliot Wolf.
I know. I'm just telling you, that's usually a tell. If somebody is presenting information with the term AAV, generally, you should ask some more questions about that information.
Okay. Well, excuse me for using the AAV. Okay. So it's $30 million a year in San Francisco on an APY, $30 million per year, which was the lower of the two offers from the Patriots again. But it's not about those numbers; it's about the guaranteed money, right?
Yeah.
All right, $76 million was what it was that he ended up with.
Should I take my blood pressure medicine now, and before I hear this, or after?
The Patriots' guarantee exceeded $80 million. It was between $80 and $90 million.
It's kind of a wait. I mean. The difference between 80 and 90 is
exceeded
massive.
80. Exceeded 80. It was
okay,
it was well over 80. It was well over 80. And I would tell you this too: the first 3 years were virtually guaranteed. Now let me explain that term.
And he said no.
I'm going to explain that term. All right. Okay, because I did hear Felger explain there's $31 million in the Niners offer that isn't fully guaranteed.
Right, full guarantees versus injury guarantees.
Which is true.
So time of signing guarantee is a big one.
Here's the nuance, though.
Okay,
the nuance to this.
The nuance is APY.
The nuance is that the majority of that $31 million, okay, the great majority of it was in 2026 and became guaranteed in 2025. What does that mean? Well, that means that for the Niners to get out of paying that money in 2026, they would need to cut him before April 1st of 2025. At that point, they will have paid Brandon Aiyuk, or will owe him, $45 million for playing 1 year for him. So when I say virtually guaranteed, that's what that means, is that they're not going to cut a guy they're not going to cut a guy and pay him $45 million for 1 year. So that to avoid paying the remainder of that money, they would have to cut him then. Does that make sense?
What if he suffers the career-ending injury?
Well, it's guaranteed for injury.
Okay.
So it's guaranteed for injury, so he's covered there.
Gotcha.
So it's basically a way of getting around the NFL's funding rule. I won't bore people with the details of that, but the practical guarantee is $76 million.
Okay.
The Patriots' practical guarantee was well over $80 million.
Wow.
Again, I'll say it one more time because I said it on Sports Sunday. if this was about the money, the Patriots won in every single way.
So this is not
They
the
won-
Ridley. This is not
about
comparable
money.
to Ridley.
This is not about money. This was not about money.
This wasn't a team coming in at midnight and
Here's
sweeping
what
it
it
away.
is. Brandon Aiyuk never wanted to leave San Francisco. And if the agents were going to create proper leverage in this situation,
So convenient how you did this.
if they were going to create proper leverage in this situation, they needed to figure out from Brandon Aiyuk, which team will you accept a trade to, right? So they have the financial numbers out there, and they go to Aiyuk, and it's because the Niners have the power to just trade him, right? You can't stop that from happening if you're
Right.
Brandon Aiyuk. So it's like, if we're going to go down this road, dude, like, you got to tell us where you're comfortable going.
Gronkowski stopped it.
And it was, and interestingly enough, it was Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was the team which had the worst financial offer, like by a healthy margin. It was behind Cleveland and New England, right? They offered 27.7. The reason Pittsburgh offered 27.7 is because they didn't want to pay anyone more than what T.J. Watt is making. And T.J. Watt's making 28. And the reason, and this is like seems ridiculous, but Aiyuk felt like he had a rapport with Mike Tomlin that was built during the Zoom calls he did with him before the 2020 draft. So he said, like, if I'm going to go anywhere but stay here based on what's out there, send me to Pittsburgh.
How'd he get along with Mayo?
I don't know if they. I don't know if they've ever crossed paths at all.
They may not have talked.
Yeah. So anyway,
And that money's on the table. Wow.
Anyway, so the guarantee was over $80 million, and I'm not like, and look, like, I'm not guessing. I'm not. This is what it is, and it was a very real contract. Man. He was seeing the first 3 years of that deal the same way he's going to see the first 3 years of the Niners deal. And he's going to make the $76 million over the first 3 years of the Niners deal. The way this thing was going to be structured was going to guarantee him well over $80 million.
It's kind of vague. Well over 80. Like,
I don't have the exact number.
You say well over 80. I'm thinking
is it
84,
82?
85.
Is it 82 or is it 89?
That's a tad over 80.
Well, I'll tell you why it's a big
Well
difference.
over is
I'll
4
tell you
plus.
why. Because if the difference between staying in San Francisco on a team that could very well win the Super Bowl this year and coming to New England is a difference of $5 million in guarantees, well, why the hell would you go to New England? You have to blow everybody. If you're the Patriots, you have to blow everybody else out of the water to get a guy to come to your team.
I don't want to dive in the tax situation in California too.
Worse than New England.
Yep.
He chose the worst tax situation.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, it's again, this was I know it's like to some degree it's always about the money, but this was not about the money. He ruled them out like with his camp. He ruled the Patriots and the Browns out, and the Pittsburgh was the one where, all right, like, if I've gun to my head, I'm forced to be traded, I want to play for the Steelers. And that's a result of where you are as a football team right now. He was willing to take significantly less to play in Pittsburgh over New England.
So it's not just that, and this is why New England cannot say, well, he was never going to leave San Francisco. Well, no, he was. He was willing to go to Pittsburgh. They just didn't pony up the money. You ponied up the money, and they still told you no because they have no interest in you because you have no program.
Yeah,
because you've got nothing to attract.
This is a football
thing.
This is a football thing. It's not a money thing. Yes.
How about my theory from yesterday where I said, I know the money was high.
Oh, I mean,
but they don't want out because they don't want to be embarrassed by it.
If this is 5 years ago, I think Aiyuk's on the Patriots right now. 100. If Bill Belichick.
Oh, maybe not 5 years ago. Let's call it like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
7 or 8
whatever
years
the
ago.
number
5 is about the time they start tapping out.
Whatever the number is, but it's like this was a very, very real offer, and it was, and again, I'm not like I can't reveal who I've talked to. Just trust that I've talked to everybody.
Elliot.
Okay, I've talked to everybody.
You talk to Elliot a lot, don't you? You're a big Elliot guy.
I've talked to everybody. No, but I've talked. I have the full.
I've warned the
context of
audience
situation.
about you and Elliot.
All right. Well, let me ask you this then. When I got into a war 3 years ago with the afternoon show on Garoppolo, and I kept saying the Niners are not trading Garoppolo on this show on the morning. Like, it's not happening. Don't hold your breath. And they kept hammering it and hammering it and hammering it. I don't know. I would say I'm pretty good with the Niners.
Oh yeah, no Shanahan, that's your boy.
I don't think that I think you can trust some of the information that I'm getting out of that place too. And look, like I talk to everybody in this situation, so don't this is not about one person or another person planning it. And I would jump on the train that Reese was driving a couple weeks ago, where it's like you have to we don't talk to one person and just roll with something. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like you remember Reese said it. I can't remember if it was here, wherever Reese said it, but Reese said it. And I'm 100%
called in.
Yeah, I'm 100% with Mike on it. It's kind of. I don't mind people digging into my reporting or guessing where stuff's coming from. That's part of the business. But when you start to question when you start to question the credibility of something or assume
bad report
or assume it's coming from one person or it's very thinly sourced, that's where things are all right, just look at the scoreboard, you know?
Yeah. All right. How's the rest of the league look at this?
The rest of the league looks. I think the rest of the league saw it as Aiyuk was never leaving San Francisco. And
unless it was Pittsburgh.
I felt that way all along. I think,
or the Commanders.
No, but he wanted to stay there. And I think things got really freaking sideways between player and team with the way that Aiyuk was acting, and it got really ugly.
Why did it take so long to give him this offer and get him paid? Can I ask that question?
Because it got pulled off the table. The offer went on. They offered him the Niners offered him two options, right, on August 12th. Those offers didn't just sit there on the table. They had to resurrect that deal last week.
Okay, but the offer he ended up accepting, was that on the table at the start of August?
Yeah, more or less. Not exactly, but more or less, yes.
And he rejected it then, but then a month later accepted it?
Yeah.
So he thought he was worth a lot
because
more
I think it's sort of gun to your head.
Yeah, go get the market.
Right. It's one thing to threaten send me to Pittsburgh. It's another thing to actually be there at the start of the season and this thing's been going on and you've got a team that you've been to 4 or 3 NFC title games with in 4 years as a pro. It's another thing to pull the trigger and say no, send me to Pittsburgh, where you don't know who the quarterback's going to be, where they play in a very difficult division, where it's much tougher to come out of the conference. All of that, it's, Brandon Aiyuk, I think in the end, got what he always wanted, which was to get paid in San Francisco. And they pushed it as far as they could. And the Niners more or less moved off their spot quite a bit from the spring because they were 26 in May. But in the end, the Niners said, this is as far as we're going to go. And eventually, Aiyuk decided to take what was on the table.
So you're saying financially, the Patriots beat the offer he ended up taking on every element. Total money, guaranteed money,
Yes.
all better.
Yeah.
APY, better.
It was better in every way.
Everything was better in every way.
Everything in every way.
And he wouldn't even engage. He basically spit in their face and said, no thanks. I'm not interested.
See, that's
I think
Sports
that's,
Radio Pro.
I think that's worse.
New narrative getting spun.
That's kind of, well, no, I've been spinning it for weeks. It's kind of worse than being cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, cheap is bad, but
yesterday.
cheap you can fix overnight by just changing your attitude and spending some damn money. Looks like they did go and try and spend the money, and now nobody will even hear them out.
Yeah.
It's a sad place
to be. It's where you are.
It's where you are.
Sad place to be. I don't know how you change that without Drake May. Drake May is the only way you're going to change that. And when he's playing by week 7, they won't be stupid for having him on the field. I won't criticize Elliott Wolf and Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo. That won't be me. That's not going to be my role in this.
You'll be like, what took them so long?
Well, I have week 5 as my week now. I originally was week 9. I've moved it up to week 5 because I think he's getting close. He's getting close. The checkpoint is after week 4.